All right, so let me just set the stage for you because if you're not into football, you might not even realize how insane this story is. We're talking about AC Milan here, one of the most legendary clubs in the history of sports, not just soccer, sports in general. And their journey is like this roller coaster ride that goes from absolute world domination to complete collapse and then to this gritty, stubborn climb back. And the thing that makes it so fascinating is how human it feels because it's not just wins and losses, it's identity, it's culture, it's mistakes, it's glory, it's heartbreak. And when you look at it all together, it plays out like a movie where you've got superheroes, villains, betrayals, redemption arcs, the whole deal. And I swear, if Hollywood tried to write a script like this, you'd say it was too far-fetched. But it actually happened, it's real, and that's why I want to walk through it with you. Because when you hear about the golden era, the insane dominance, the decline, the lost decade, and then the revival signs, you're not just hearing a football story, you're hearing a life story. And I guarantee by the end of this ride, you're going to feel like you lived it with them because it's inspiring, it's tragic, it's badass, and it's the kind of thing that makes you remember why people get so obsessed with this game. All right, so here's the thing, man. When you talk about AC Milan's golden era, late 80s all the way through 2007, you're talking about a dynasty that felt almost untouchable. Like if football was the mafia, these guys were the bosses of bosses. They owned the whole damn city, the whole continent. And it started with this crazy revolution under Arrigo Sacchi, who came in with this wild idea that football could be high press, fast, tactical, not just the old school Italian catenaccio defensive thing. And suddenly you had this backline with Maldini, Baresi, Tassotti, Costa Court, like an actual wall of granite in front of goal. And on top of that, they bring in Dutch assassins like Marco van Basten, Ruud Gullit, and Frank Rijkaard, guys who looked like comic book characters, just steamrolling defenses. And it wasn't just that they won, it was how they won. They humiliated teams 5-0 against Real Madrid in '89, Champions League trophies, back-to-back, San Siro shaking like it was about to lift off the ground. And then as the years rolled on, you get Carlo Ancelotti's Milan in the 2000s. That was like a second act in the movie. It's a whole different cast. But the same dominance, Pirlo spraying passes like a quarterback, Gattuso foaming at the mouth, just pure chaos energy, Kaka gliding through defenders like he wasn't even touching the ground, Shevchenko smashing in goals like he was programmed in a lab, and Maldini, this guy just never left. Like the eternal captain, the face of Milan, carrying that tradition from the late 80s all the way into the mid-2000s. And during that run, they collected 7 Champions League trophies, Scudetti, Super Cups, everything you could imagine. They were kings of Europe. They were the team everyone measured themselves against. You didn't just beat Milan, you survived them, and the aura around the club was insane. Walking into the San Siro during those nights was like entering a gladiator pit where you knew you were probably not getting out alive. And it went on for decades, generation after generation of legends. And the whole vibe was just this sense of inevitability. Like if AC Milan was in the competition, you had to deal with them. They were the final boss, the big bad wolf. And no matter who you were, Barcelona, Real Madrid, Manchester United, there was always this feeling that Milan could crush you. And that's why that golden era is remembered as one of the most dominant stretches any club has ever had in the history of football. You know what's wild about AC Milan? It's not just that they won a bunch of trophies, it's that they had this identity, this aura. Like when you thought of Milan, you didn't just think of a football team. You thought of a whole damn philosophy, and it was this perfect mix of steel and elegance. Like they could grind you down with the most disciplined, hard-as-nails defense, and then in the same breath blow your mind with beautiful, silky football that looked like art. And the crazy thing is, it wasn't fake. It wasn't branding, it was real. You had defenders like Maldini and Baresi, who were so classy they could have been movie stars, but on the pitch, they were killers. They shut down strikers before the strikers even knew what was happening. And then behind them, you had goalkeepers like Sebastiano Rossi or later these guys who just radiated calm in the chaos. And then in midfield, man, it was like a laboratory of genius. Pirlo with his long hair just floating around, dictating play like a jazz musician improvising. Seedorf with this raw power and intelligence. Gattuso being an absolute psycho, but in the best way, snarling, tackling, firing everyone up. And all of that fed into this bigger picture that Milan wasn't just about tactics, it was about control, about intimidation. Walking into the San Siro, you felt this weight, this history pressing down on you like you were about to perform in front of gods. And then up top, they always had that one lethal forward. Van Basten, Weah, Shevchenko, Inzaghi, guys who could end your night in a heartbeat, and the whole package made Milan unique. Because they weren't just Italian, they were universal. They embodied the tactical brains of Italy, mixed with this international flair, Dutch power, Brazilian magic, Ukrainian precision, all under that red and black banner. And the fans, those Curva Ultras, they made San Siro a damn volcano. The flares, the chants, it felt like the building was alive. And that's what Milan's identity was. Not just football, but intimidation, elegance, violence, beauty, history, and pride all fused together. They were like a rock band that sold out every arena but still scared the hell out of you because you knew they could wreck the stage at any moment. And that's why whenever you say AC Milan, even if they're not on top right now, people immediately think of greatness, of that unshakable identity that made them one of the most feared and respected clubs in the world. Man, the decline of AC Milan after the 2010s is one of those brutal stories where you see a giant just fall on its face and you almost can't believe it's real. Like, this was the club that had Maldini, Kaka, Pirlo, Shevchenko. They were gods. And then all of a sudden they're scrambling just to finish top 6 in Serie A, and it didn't happen overnight, but it felt like it did. Because once Berlusconi's money started drying up, once that whole political empire and ownership power started to fade, the cracks got exposed, the legends aged out. Guys like Maldini and Nesta couldn't play forever. Seedorf and Gattuso were running on fumes, and instead of replacing them with world-class talent, they started selling off their crown jewels like Kaka to Madrid, then Zlatan and Thiago Silva to PSG. And that right there was the death blow, man, because Milan went from being the hunter to being the hunted in the transfer market. Rich clubs just picked them apart, and then they made terrible decisions at the management level. Coaches coming and going, like it was a revolving door, no stability, no long-term plan, and the identity just evaporated. San Siro, which used to be this fortress, turned into a graveyard some nights, half-empty stand fans protesting with banners, just pure chaos. And while all this was happening, Juventus was dominating Serie A, Inter started rebuilding, and in Europe the Premier League and La Liga clubs just pulled miles ahead. So suddenly Milan, the kings of Europe, were struggling to even qualify for the Europa League. And the craziest part is how irrelevant they became. Like, kids growing up in the 2010s didn't even know Milan as a powerhouse. They just knew them as this fallen club with cool jersey, and that's such a mind bender when you remember they had 7 Champions League trophies. But that's what happens when you don't reinvest, when you treat football like it's frozen in time, because the game keeps evolving, money keeps flowing, and if you don't adapt, you're dead. In Milan, they were dead for almost a decade, limping through seasons, trying to rebuild with random signings, foreign investors coming in with promises that went nowhere, and the whole thing was sad. Like watching Mike Tyson fight bums in the late 2000s. You could see the name, you could see the ors, but you knew it wasn't the same monster anymore. The lost decade for AC Milan, man, that's like one of the darkest, most depressing stretches you could imagine for a club that used to be the absolute kings of Europe. Because from around 2010 to 2020 it was just this endless cycle of disappointment, false promises, and mediocrity. And if you were a Milan fan during that time, you probably aged 20 years just watching them try to figure out who the hell they were anymore. Like, they went from lifting Champions League trophies in Athens and Istanbul battles to begging for a Europa League spot. And that's insane when you think about the heritage they had. But that's what happens when ownership gets messy, finances collapse, and management has no clue. Because you had Berlusconi finally pulling out after decades of dominance, selling to these random investors, first Italians, then this mysterious Chinese group that nobody really trusted, and then Elliott Management, a hedge fund like a football club that once had Maldini and Kaka, now being run like a business portfolio. And it showed on the pitch because the squads were weak, patched together with journeymen and misfits. Managers were coming and going so fast you couldn't even remember who was in charge. Allegri, and Seedorf, Inzaghi, Mihajlovic, Montella, Gattuso, like it was this revolving door of legends and hopefuls, none of them sticking. And while Milan was stuck in this identity crisis, Juventus were winning 9 straight Scudetti, Inter slowly rebuilt, Napoli started playing sexy football, and in Europe the Premier League and Spanish giants were just pulling further and further away.
so Milan became irrelevant, which is a crazy word to use for a team with 7 Champions League titles. But that's exactly what they were. Irrelevant. Kids growing up didn't even know Milan as a threat. They just saw a club with a cool jersey, and the San Siro vibe reflected it, man. It went from being this terrifying fortress to this half-empty echo chamber. Fans still showed up with banners and chants, but the energy was frustration, anger, disappointment, and that lost decade felt like purgatory, because you kept waiting for the comeback, kept waiting for that one big signing or that one miracle season, but it never came, and every year it was the same story: mid-table finishes, a couple Europa League games, and then back to the same old misery. And it was surreal watching a titan shrink into a shadow of itself, right in front of your eyes. What's crazy about AC Milan right now is that after all those years of misery, you can finally see these signs of life again, like the monster's not fully back on its feet, but it's breathing, it's twitching, and that's enough to send chills through Europe, because this is AC Milan we're talking about, and the revival really started when they stopped pretending they could buy their way back with random washed-up stars, and instead went all in on building something sustainable with young, hungry players. And you look at guys like Rafael Leão, this electric winger, who can just tear a defense apart with one sprint, or Theo Hernández bombing down the left, like a damn freight train, and then you add in Tonali before he left, Benacer, Maignan in goal. These aren't just decent players, these are dudes who play with swagger, who play like they know they're wearing that red and black shirt with history stitched into it, and the shift really came under Stefano Pioli, because here's a guy who doesn't have the celebrity aura of a Mourinho or Guardiola, but he came, stabilized the chaos, gave the team an identity again, and suddenly Milan weren't just competing, they were winning. Serie A 2022 first Scudetto in over a decade, and that wasn't some fluke, man. That was the culmination of smart recruitment, trust in you, and a coach who knew how to get the best out of his squad. And you felt the energy shift at San Siro. The place was rocking again, full stadiums, Curva Sud, back in full force, flares, chants, the whole gladiator pit atmosphere. And then in Europe, making that run to the Champions League semis in 2023, beating Napoli along the way. That was a statement, like, hey, Milan's not all the way back, but they're knocking on the door again. And you can feel that fear creeping back into opponents, because nobody really wants to face AC Milan on a Champions League night. And yeah, there are still issues. Financially, they're not competing with the oil clubs. They're not stacked like City or Madrid. But what they've got is momentum, identity, and that aura slowly rebuilding. And the thing is, when a club with Milan's history starts to rise again, it's not just about the present, it's about the memory of what they used to be, and that weight alone can crush teams. So right now it feels like the giant isn't dead, it was just sleeping, and the revival signs are real. You can see it in the way they play, the way the fans believe again. It's not the golden era, not yet, but the flame is burning. So if you zoom out and look at the whole arc of AC Milan, man, it's like one of those wild stories you tell over a couple drinks. Because it's not just its mythology, it's rise, dominance, collapse, and then the slow crawl back to life. And that's why people love football, because it mirrors life itself. You get the glory days where you feel untouchable, you get the crashes where everything falls apart, and then you get that chance to earn it again. And Milan is right in that phase where the scars of the fall are still there, but you can see the fire in their eyes again. And that's powerful, because when a sleeping giant wakes up, the whole landscape changes. And whether you're a fan of Milan or not, you've got to respect what that red and black jersey represents. Its history, its culture, its resilience, and it's proof that even when you've been knocked down for a decade, you can still get back up and scare the world all over again. So here's to the past legend, here's to the kids carrying the torch now, and here's to the future, because AC Milan's story is far from finished. Good luck to them on the journey ahead, and thank you guys for hanging out, for listening. It's been a ride. I love doing this kind of deep dive with you all, and I appreciate the hell out of the time we get to share. So stay safe, stay curious, and I'll catch you on the next one.